Thank you, thank you. It's great to be here. How many of you all, honestly, how many of you all are familiar with kalimba? Really? Okay. How many of you all are here because you want to hear more information about kalimba? Okay, now how many of y'all are here simply because you saw a guy on the picture with gold pants? Come on, tell the truth. Okay. Well, as he said, my name is Kevin Spears, and I was been blessed to play the traditional African instrument called kalimba. It was really was made famous around the world by the leader of Earth, Wind, and Fire, Maurice White. And when I was 10 years old, my sister was a huge fan of theirs, and she had a whole album collection. And I pulled out an album and saw the album sleeve and saw the instrument, and I was like, this is exotic and this is incredible. Now, keep in mind, I grew up in Kentucky, so at that time, Lexington, Kentucky. So at that time, there was no African culture whatsoever in Kentucky, and so so when I saw that album, the album cover, and then I saw him sitting around multiple instruments. In fact, the album was called Open Our Eyes, and I saw him sitting in the middle of a circle of maybe 40 different kalimbas, and I began to listen to it, and it fascinated me, that instrument. And I begged my mother to buy one for me for Christmas when I was 10, and then one when I was 11. And in fact, this is the first kalimba. This is the one that she bought me when I was 10 years old. Yeah. So that used to be my Lucille. I got another one now. So. And so that's when I began to play, and it came at a perfect time. Number one, I must say that it was destiny for me to play that instrument, and it came at a perfect time because I had just begun to grow tired from playing my mom's pots and pans, because I started that when I was 6 years old. And between the pots and pans and then the sweet spot on the counter in the kitchen, those were my drums. Those, you know how it works. Those were my drums, and nobody asked me to play, and in fact, they did the opposite. But I played because I enjoyed it. And then when my mom bought me the kalimba, the first 2 weeks after that Christmas, I mean, she had bought me toys, she'd bought clothing and shoes, and at that time it was Chuck Taylor, Converse, right? All of that was still unopened 2 weeks later, and it was because of the kalimba. And so from that point, when I was 10, for the next 25 years, the kalimba became medicine for me. And now, fast forward, little did I ever know that I would be traveling the world playing the instrument, and that I would meet and perform with a lot of different people, including Earth, Wind, and Fire, the guys out of Earth, Wind, and Fire. It's been an incredible journey, and I just want you to know that regardless of how old you are or how young you are, whatever your gift is, it will make room for you, and especially when you use it to uplift humanity and use it for positive purposes. And so. So I guess we're here to talk about banjo. But so I've had my journey with kalimba, like I said, started when I was 10, and I mean I could write a book in terms of the experiences, some with people, some with animals, some regular, some things I still to this day I can't explain in terms of why. So we'll go over some of that, but. And as you see here, over the course of 20 to 30 years, I've collected kalimbas, of course, since I like them. And many of these are from different parts. And then I also have one here, this particular one here. You all familiar with Alex Haley, from the movie Roots? This was his. I went to, when he passed away, they, as they do when people die, they auction off most of your stuff, right? And I went to an auction up in Norris, Tennessee, and I was able to acquire this one from that. And I have, documentation. I even saved my from that. And so feel free, toward the end, we can come up and take a look at the instruments. So a couple of these pieces I made. The kalimba originated in Africa. from an instrument called mbira, or mbira is how they say it. It's M-B-I-R-A, and it originated in Zimbabwe, but it grew from, they say that it grew from there. So in many, many parts of Africa, it has many, many, many different names, shapes, and styles, and hundreds of tunings. Some of the names are, as I said, mbira, and then there's Lekimbe, Sanza, I can't think of the other one, Lekimbe, Sanza, and there's many, many different names. It just depends on where you go and what part of Africa that you're in and what language that they speak in terms of what they call it. So then what happened, fast forward, in the 50s, 1950s, there was a man by the name of Hugh Tracy, who was an ethnomusicologist, and he moved to South Africa, and he was just fascinated by the African instruments and recordings. And he was, during that time, it was rare for that to happen or be able to do it. And so what he did was he went around many, many different parts to visit many different tribes and to create a recorded record of the music, of the people, and of the instruments. And so in the mid-50s or late 50s, he began to make an instrument that he wanted the world to see. Now the mbira, and I didn't bring mine, the mbira is a solid body instrument, and it's much heavier. And so what they do, they take that and they put that in a gourd, or what they call, I can't think of the name of it.
Calabash?
It's in a calabash. Well, they also call it a dezi, I think is what they call it, D-E-Z-I. And they mount this in the gourd. They'll split a gourd, and they mount it in there with the stick, and they'll play it. And I have played one that was like that, and I can tell you, nothing that I have, even including with modern electronics, comes even close to the beauty of that sound. And I will tell you, from playing it, because of the gourd being shaped in a curved pattern, when you place your fingers in it to play it, it actually gives you a stereo effect from playing it from a natural gourd. And so some of those are the things that I want to talk about as well, in terms of there are a lot of things that you think that are modern technology, but in many places in the world, including Africa, they came up with thousands of years ago by using natural materials. To give you an example, who invented the electric guitar? Les Paul? Was it Les Paul? Or was it Gibson?
A little earlier than that, actually. Yeah.
Whoever it was. The thing is, my point is this. We think that distortion is a modern effect. It's actually not. Africans came up with distortion 3,000 years ago. And with the instrument kalimba, or the mbira, what they would do, they would take the mbira and they would drill little holes in it, and they would loosely tie seashells or pieces of metal to the body of the instrument, so that when you played it, it created fuzz. And fuzz is the root of what distortion is. It's just, distortion is, modern distortion is just a much stronger version of that. But they like that. I don't really care for that sound on kalimba, but they've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. So it's just another example of there's a lot of ancient technology that's out there, that used to be there, that that people have come up with, that's kind of lost or unknown. So this particular one, as I said, this is a Hugh Tracy kalimba. This is a 17 note. They usually come 15 to 17 notes. Now, what really distinguishes the difference between a kalimba and an mbira? The mbira is a solid body. Kalimba or the sanza, they're a hollow body, like an acoustic guitar. And they did that in order for them to be able to take it and travel with it and play music and that type of thing. Kind of like like the Walkman, Think about it. So I'll play a acoustic song here, to let you hear what it's like. And this song here is in honor of my mom, who's passed away, who bought my first instrument. And so it's called A Mother's Love. So I grew up in America. I grew up in Kentucky, as I mentioned. So living in the South, you know, I grew up listening to jazz, funk, gospel, rock, and other things like that. And so, of course, that's the music that mainly influences me in terms of what I play. So as a kid, you know, at that time, they did not have electronic or the real inexpensive guitar tuners at that time. They only had the large gray box that had the dial on it, that you had to go to a school or something like that. You know, those were the only ones that had them because they were very expensive. And so because of that, I was forced to learn to tune by ear, and I'm glad. And because many times in life, when you're forced to do something out of one, out of necessity, and number two, out of the fact that you can't afford, you know, more expensive things, it allows you to delve into something in a way that you never know, and it brings out things out of you that you never thought they were there. And so I learned to tune by ear. And so then when I would listen to a different album, when I'd get tired of a specific song, I wanted to learn something else, but I knew I had to tune the instrument. And they are tunable, for those that don't know, they are tunable. You slide the keys up or down. And so there's the bridge underneath it. However, that if the key is shorter past the bridge, the higher the pitch. The longer the key past the bridge, the deeper the pitch. And so I learned to tune by ear, and you know, for better or for worse. But it has opened me up to be able to not have a lot of rules in terms of creativity and how to play and what to play, and you know, and that type of thing. So so yes, I grew up listening to a lot of different styles of music. I grew up listening to, and later in life, as I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, I lived there for 18 years. I started listening to other, you know, world music, Afro-Cuban music, and just many different styles from around the world. And at that time, when I first started listening to it, especially Afro-Cuban music, you know, with it being 6/8 versus 4/4, at first I couldn't tell where the one was. I couldn't tell where it started. And I watched Ileana's lecture the other time. You'll give her a. Yeah, she gave a lecture here. Yeah. And so I could identify with what she was saying, because I you know, like I said, you know, I grew up listening to 4/4 like most Americans, and 6/8 is completely different, and not even knowing where it started, where the phrase started, or whatever the case may be. But I had a good friend of mine that was from Africa, from Ivory Coast, that played djembe. He was a dancer and played djembe. And in the African tradition, the way that they teach you to play, especially when you're young or when you begin, and it worked immediately for me. And that is, if you don't understand 6/8 or any particular rhythm, they play that rhythm on your body. So he would pat on the back of my shoulder, and when he began to say, you know, he would say, "This is where it starts," and he would begin to play that rhythm. However, whatever, it all made sense to me. And from then on, I started listening to all kinds of rhythms, and I understood what they were. Most of them, you know, there are some that are still complicated, but that's where it came from. So then, fast forward, I began to listen to. I love flamenco guitar. How many of y'all like Spanish guitar or flamenco guitar? Well, I started listening to a gentleman who passed away a few years ago by the name of Paco de Lucia. And I'm an incredible guitar player. And he if you guys think that Americans can play guitar, listen to flamenco. Listen to flamenco. And he could sound, he and other guys, Paco Pena and other guys, they sound, one guy, they can sound like they'll play 4 or 5 different parts on the guitar simultaneously. And so what it did for me, it opened up my mind to even the possibility of doing so. And so I began to learn to separate in my mind different parts, starting with 2 parts, starting with then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then it went on from there. And so so my tunings began to reflect that as well. And so I'll play an acoustic piece here. It's amplified, running through my pedals, but just purely acoustic. Big difference, huh? So what happened was that I started playing in, first time I ever played publicly, let me say this, for 25 years I played in private. Like I said, it was purely for my own heart and my own soul. And I was satisfied with that. I never had a desire to actually play publicly. And some of my best friends never even knew that I played the instrument. And, but for me, it was very personal. It was, you know, I could go into such a beauty or communing with spirit, with solace and that type of thing. And so I never shared that with other people, you know, and, but I'll play this song here called, it's a song I wrote, tribute to Paco de Lucia. I tell you what, let me do this first to give you an idea. Let me give you, because I got a lot to say. In a traditional African way, they basically play 3 to 5 notes in a repetitive fashion, and then they usually sing over top of it. Every other phrase, every other time they come around, they might add a little variation to it to keep it, you know, to keep it fresh. But this is basically. Similar to that. And so, and I honor that, and I've learned from that, but I knew that, you know, I knew my gift was different, right? And so I knew that there was so much other music that I wanted to be able to play and listen to. And so listening to Paco de Lucia opened my mind to that. And it's a testament to kalimba. And as the title says of the lecture, kalimba has changed my life, my world, and it has changed the world of music, period, around the world in many ways that we'll get into that a lot of people don't understand. But this is called Ode to Paco. started that song too fast because it takes me a while to warm up, and I realize as I get older, it takes a little while longer. So I started that song too fast, and I could tell by midways in there, but I'm trying to push through it. So like that old Buick, you know, it takes a little while, where you can get to highway speed, you know. The young people, they don't know anything about Buick. I'll say something later that you'll understand. Okay? Yeah. So, but yes, that song's called "Ode to Paco," and so for me, the kalimba, number one, the kalimba represents 30 or 40 different instruments. If you have the imagination, or if you push to pursue it and to allow her to reveal her secrets, put it that way. And speaking of her, many years ago, I lived in Atlanta, and at the time I was dating a flight attendant for Delta, and she came to a performance that I had, and afterwards I said, "Well, what did you think?" She said, "Well, I loved it." She said, "But how did she put it?" She said, "I can't compete with the kalimba." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "The kalimba is your girlfriend." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "The way you hold it, the way you all sing, the way you all, the bond that you all have." She said, "I can't come between that." So this is my girlfriend. Yeah. So, and she's been faithful to me all of these years, even when there's been others. She's been faithful to me, and seriously, I tell people that, you know, if I had not had kalimba, you know, I'd be smoking things, I'd be doing things that I shouldn't be doing, you know. And so, but my outlet was kalimba, and I know that it's very, very important for young people to, I mean everyone, but to start out when you're young is to have a creative outlet that will allow you to express yourself, because I think we all, in my opinion, we are all versions of creation. We are created. And so within us is the desire or ability to create something. And if we don't do those things, it makes a boring life, number one. It makes you uptight. And it doesn't allow you to express that creative side within you. And regardless of what it is, whether a musician, painting, or whatever the case may be. So that particular song, to give you an idea, and as I mentioned earlier, for me the kalimba is I don't even know how you would say it. I've often wanted to be able to be put on is it EKG for brainwave, to see what's going on, you know, electrically, because what happens is that, like that particular song, I'm playing like a pseudo bass line. And all of these things are not traditional in terms of how you play kalimba. And that is the bass line, and that goes. Right? I will say this, for every note that you hear me play, there's the same amount going on that I have to mute. So every note that I play, I have to mute that note before I go to the next note. So my thought was, in the spirit of martial arts, you make every move count. So if I'm going to mute it, I might as well make it percussive, and then I might as well make it percussive. So that's why you hear me. If I mute it quietly, I would go like that, right? But I might as well, just to make it more percussive. So there I'm playing a bass line, and then here I'm adding like a rhythm guitar, if it was a second player, a rhythm guitar. And so from there, I'm doing chords, because traditionally in Africa they don't usually do chords, but because of you keyboard players, you have created a bad habit with me, and that is I felt like if a keyboard player or a piano player can do a chord, why can't I do it on the instrument? And so some chords I'll close it, dampen it, my foot pedal, and then some I'll leave open, because if I know that I'm going from a couple of notes to something different for that split second that it takes me to get there, I'll leave that chord open so that you're hearing something until I can get to where I need to go. So like that transition, that feel. I do better not looking. So it's not traditional kalimba players and beard players don't play that way. So, when you hear traditional embidder, don't say to yourself, well, man, that's nothing like what I heard Kevin do, and just to let you know. So if you take, for example, well, that's the second part. The second part is a rhythm guitar part. Is that? Within note, that's two. And the chord would be, I could do that. I can make it quiet or staccato. So basically, it allows me to do 4 or 5 parts at one time. Now, women have been doing it for years. They just call it multitasking. But guys, it's taken me years to be able to do it, But I just apply to music. So what do y'all think so far? All right. Is that okay? So from there, I will say this, and that is, a hidden thing about what kalimba has, how it's affected music around the world. And that is, and I'll bring this up, and she'll smile, and we'll just keep moving. Liliana will. It is the kalimba that has inspired Afro-Cuban music. And it is because of, the distinct bass lines in Afro-Cuban music. Doom, 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 doom. That was inspired by kalimba, by a very large kalimba that you sat on, that's generally made in the islands, and it's called, some would call it bass box, but a lot call it manimbula, and it's the size of a suitcase. The keys are much thicker, and that's what they played it on. So now when you hear Afro-Cuban music, you hear it played on the bass lines, you hear it played on electric bass. Before they played on electric bass, they played it on upright. Before they played it on upright, they played it on the manimbula, which is a large version of this, and it literally is the size of a suitcase, and the keys are about that wide and about that long. And so that's what inspired those particular bass lines in Afro-Cuban music. And I mean, it's almost fair to say that, if you don't have that type of bass line, it's really not Afro-Cuban, because it could become something completely different. But that's what gives it that distinct aspect of that music. How many of y'all like B.B. King?
Yeah.
Just a few? I don't play blues, but this is my Lucille. This is probably about 30 years old, and you can even see in the indentation of me playing it for so many years, and taking it with me around the world, and going through airports and TSA, and they always make me pull out everything, because I'm to the point where even if the sign says take all the things out of your bags, with the electronics and all the stuff I have, I don't take it out. I run it through. And I know they're going to search it, so I'll just let them search it. You know what I mean? And then done. So, how many people do you all see up here? Kalimba is a band to me, for me. My bass guitar. We had three parts, pseudo drum part, bass, and then the lead kalimba. So. You know why I looked at you on that one, right? Well, I know young people, they love beats. Speaking of distortion, Ileana showed in her lecture the two sticks, rosewood sticks, they're called clave. This is my clave. time, I want to bring in my guitar player. His name is Jimi Hendrix, in case y'all never heard of him. So with a name like Jimi Hendrix, you know he's going to be good when he plays, right? Hopefully. Now, you all got to forgive me. This is a traditional African instrument. So what I'm about to do, don't try at home. Why are you shaking your head? Okay. How many of y'all recognize that? Listen. Another gem about kalimba. That is how it's affected the world in terms of music. How many of you all are jazz fans? Many scholars, most scholars, say that the most influential jazz album of all time is what?
Kind of blue.
You're a smart man. Seriously, it's Kind of Blue. Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. I think it was written in, it was done, released 1957 or 58, somewhere. And it changed American music in many, many different ways. Because you know, we know jazz, and then from on the funk side, jazz, hip hop, James Brown, all of that came out of that. And then in many other ways, it affected other music. But yes, Kind of Blue was radical for jazz, for music at that time. So when I read in Miles's autobiography, now don't y'all laugh, I think it's on page 263 or 264. It's one of those two. And I have three or four copies of his autobiography, and I couldn't put my hands on them before I came here. But what he said was, and this was powerful to me, especially because, as you all know, many people in America, they see kalimba as a toy. And for people that have the kalimba, most of the time it sits on a coffee table collecting dust, because it's, you know, just for you know, visitors to come over to tinker around with, you know, as a conversation piece. And so I knew for me it meant so much more, but I also know that when I first began to play out, that people saw it that way. And so when I read in his autobiography, and I did the research in terms of Kind of Blue and how it affected American music, I read his autobiography, and it said, Miles said that his girlfriend at the time took him to go see Ballet Africain in New York. And that's probably Cicely Tyson, that's probably who it was. But took him to go see Ballet Africain, an African dance troupe in New York at the time. And when I tell you they're world class, because I've seen some film of them, but then also I played in Japan and got a chance to play some music with one of their lead drummers. And I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's beyond words. It's beyond words what they're able to do. And so Miles said that when his girlfriend took him to see Ballet Africain, and he said, now let me say this too. Now the term he used, and it's used a lot in the world, especially in America, and I would ask you all not to use that term, and that is thumb piano. Number one, it's not a piano. Pianos have strings. Piano is a string and percussion instrument. Let's honor those who created the instrument, honor them for what they call it, and use one of those words, because really thumb piano is really a European word that to me it's kind of taking credit for the instrument. So that's a side note. But anyway, so I forgive Miles because of who he is. And so he said in his autobiography, he said that, and you got to understand, Miles also played at, was trained, he went to Juilliard for some period. So I mean, he was an incredible musician even at that time. Miles said that when he heard the guy playing thumb piano, he said it blew his mind. He said that because he said generally, I mean, in Western music, you basically have 12 notes or 12 chords, and that you got to come back to that in some kind of way or some shape or form. And he said, listening to the guy play the thumb piano, he said he realized that there are millions of notes and millions and thousands of combinations that you could come up with. And what he said was, he says that that's in a modal form is what he said, and said that he tried to, that's what inspired him to write Kind of Blue. He said he felt like he failed, although he tried his best to mimic the kalimba in that music. And so that's how Kind of Blue was written, was because of this instrument. And so then it went on, and it was completely different. So then it goes on to change the world, and that's another reason why I say that many people don't realize and know to what degree that this instrument, seemingly simple instrument, has affected world music. A lot of people, even jazz people, don't know that it was that it's this instrument that inspired him to write in that way. And I mean, there's no limit to how it has influenced, you know, music from, you know, around the world. But it was through this and Kind of Blue. Now I will say this too. And so it has inspired me in many different ways. And everything that you see here and everything that you've heard between the kalimba, between the pedals, between electrifying it, between what's under or behind door number 3, it's all been inspired, for me, it's all been inspired because of kalimba. And so it continues to change quietly or silently change the world. And you all, we'll have a time when there'll be, I'll open it up for questions, so you all make sure you remember those. I'll show you this. And again, this has inspired me because for as far as I could go in terms of making the kalimba a full band, at some point I began to go outside of the kalimba itself. Now, for example, as you heard, you know, with electronics, I can make it sound like a bass guitar. I can make it sound like, we did spin rock guitar. sci-fi. This is Chris's favorite. I knew this was Chris's favorite before I even let him hear it. Chris is into very electronic stuff, ambient to industrial noise and things like that. Listen to this. This is Star Trek. This brings out the Star Trek in me. Don't give Chris a hand. Let's see. Steel pan. Kind of sort of. To organ. To I don't know if I should do that one. Should I do it?
You gotta do it.
I'm a huge fan of Phil Collins keeps coming to mind. I like Phil Collins, but Peter Frampton. You know, do you feel what I feel? Like, this is my version of that. It's not quite there, but. Probably the African ancestors are probably turning over in their grave. But hey, we'll talk about it when I see them. Yeah, we did bass, so this is normally right, but then. It's a man's bass. Then, you know, me pushing the envelope, I like to go a little lower. So I can tune it to play actually down into subsonic levels. And there have been times that I've taken it into, taken a pedal in the kalimba into a guitar center and play it. And I mean, you know, the employees that you know, they look at you like, you know, like a confused puppy, you know what I mean? Because you know, and you play it through a
Or to be a fly on the wall.
There you go. Yeah, really. And I'll play it through a bass rig. You know, some of the large cab, you know, bass rigs. It literally makes the rafters really, I mean, rumble. So we won't do that here. To let's see, a little dreamy. What inspired me to, and all of these are sounds that I programmed the fellow to do. I'm a big fan of Pat Metheny, and so the guitar, I forget the name of the guitar that he played or the effect that he used to do that. This kind of sort of gives me that. It's still pan. I don't know if I mentioned to you, there's what they call, well, I think they came up with it, they coined the term in the 90s called Afrofuturism. And myself and dear friend Roy Future Man Wooten, and then many others, Sun Ra, you know, we didn't have that term back then, but it's what we've always done, and that is just take, look at things in a futuristic way using technology and filtering it through technology and things like that. And so they coined that term, you know, Afrofuturism. And so we were doing that long before, you know, there was even a name for it. So, and that's really what you see and what you, yeah, all of that. So this came out of that as well. I've been on a quest to be the whole band, the orchestra. And so what inspired this was that about 10 years ago, before I moved from Atlanta, a friend of mine is from Turkey, and he had his an 8 or 9 piece ensemble playing, and I opened up the concert. It was at a college, and I opened up the concert, and once I was done, I went and sat in the audience, and I began to listen to them, and crazy me, I thought to myself, I said, Kevin, you've been slacking. This is, self-talk. I said, Kevin, you've been slacking. And the other part of me said, how? And I said, because there's 9 people up there playing their instruments. Kevin, you should be able to play all of those same instruments live, just like they are. My other side said, you know what, I think you're right. And so I started this quest in terms of how that I could actually do that. And I mean, my experience is that, me being a praying person, I was up at maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, and then this vision or the thought flashed through my mind, and I stepped back and I said, oh my God, I said, that's it. Because for years, I didn't know what to do. And so I played these instruments here. These are glorified drum machines, basically. And let me show you this. These are drum machines. And so that flash or that vision that I saw was that this is the instrument to do that with. They play drums. Drums. Right? But then that picture that flashed through my mind, it showed me that to treat this not just as a drum machine, but to treat them as a keyboard. And that's what really did it. So I went around and looked at it, and they both have what's called MIDI out. MIDI is called, the abbreviation for MIDI is Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And all it means is just that it allows a keyboard to talk to another sound module or to another keyboard. And so if you play a certain thing, whatever note you play, it triggers the same thing in another keyboard. So it just so happened that these being drum machines, they have the same thing. And that's when it started from there. And so once I began to do that, it opened up a whole new world for me. And then it allowed me to fulfill a few of my fantasies, musical fantasies, because I've always wanted to be a piano player, but I'm not a piano player. But now I am a piano player in a kind of sort of way. I'm not you, but I'm getting there. So I began to formulate this and put these things together one by one. And my goal is, hopefully within the next 2 years, I want to be able to go to, and I'm actually working on it right now, and that is, I want to be able to be center stage at Carnegie Hall playing piano and kalimba with an orchestra backing. And if they allow me to do that, or even if they don't allow the orchestra, I'm going to be the orchestra as well. So listen to this. And again, all of this was inspired because of kalimba. Is that okay? Yeah. I will have my black and white, my tux. Give me a hand. Yeah. So then I said, well, let me add bass to it. And then I did take an internal sound in here that I've enjoyed using. And that is, where is it? There we go. This is down your alley. Congas. Yeah. I had a good friend of mine. He's passed away now. He played with his name is Count Butu. He played with the Derek Trucks band, and he and I had a duo based in Atlanta, and I was just always fascinated with congas. And but it's when you learn to play congas, especially in Afro-Cuban way, that they're very strict in terms of you learning how to do it and doing it the correct way in terms of real drums. And so, for whatever reason, my gift was not really on the real congas, but I've always played in a way that was more so kind of cross between a conga player, but like tabla from India. And so a lot of the things I wanted to do on a conga in terms of tabla way, they said, no, you don't do that on that instrument. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, with that history, and it's great to have that tradition so that it's passed on and that it's not lost. But I know that my musical path is different, for better or for worse. And so I said, well, I've got to come up with I either have to build my own instrument that doesn't have that history, or I need to take an instrument and adapt it in a way that frees me from traditional expectations. And so now I'm free. Do what I want to do. So this is my, and then also, but at the same time, I'm going to be able to play like a traditional conga player would play. But I want to be, Kevin is not. I'm not satisfied with just being good or average. I want to be world class. Anything that I want to do, I want to be world class. And if I can't, I will either stay at home, practice it until I get there. I'll just leave it alone. And so finally, when I came out and I was able to let Count Butu, before he passed away here, we did a tribute for him in Atlanta. So I was warming up on stage, and the seal of approval was Count came out from backstage, and he was like, "Who is that riffing on congas like that?" And it was me playing this instrument. And he when he saw it was me and saw what I was playing, he was like, he had mixed feelings about it. But that was good enough for me, though. Yeah, so, let's see. There we go. That's a traditional rhythm called 1-1 code. And then you go into, when you add a note, from what I was learned or taught, you add a bass note to it, it makes it rumble. So basically what I'm doing here, I'm playing two different parts as two conga players. One soloing. Here's your part right here. Y'all ready for this one? 3 parts. Now, the only reason why I'm able to play this is because of what? Kalimba. She's smiling, but she's probably cringing in one way. She says, "Oh, that's not perfect 1-1 code, but this allows me to. These instruments here allow me to have 500 to 800 different sounds, world percussion at my hands, and then let alone once I translated that to treat them and program. It takes a lot of programming to program it as a keyboard because it's not out of the box. It's not that way. As to be able to play all of that, then it opens up the door to where you can be the whole band, make more money, and you don't have to split it up between. The pay might be decent if you look at the full number, but you got to split it up between 5 people. You know what I mean? So from that. those that don't know, I have a device here called a loop station, and it just allows me to record on the spot and lay that. So that's what I just did. My second part will be this. Come on. Just a little bit, just a little bit. Now, you all didn't see it. All because of kalimba. What do y'all think so far? You know what? Let me do this. I want to open it up to questions that you might have. Don't be shy.
If this has been going on for thousands of years, the kalimba, how did they notate? How did they know what the notes were, or was it just learned?
Africa is, they learn it through, I can't think of the word they use, but it's from a verbal perspective. Oral tradition. They teach it to each person. And what happens is that, so for example, in certain villages, or in certain regions, but especially with a particular village, they teach each other, they teach the children to tune whatever instrument that they play, not just kalimba, but any instrument that they play in a way that is conducive for the village or for that region. And what's acceptable in that region, because they have a very strong tradition, and that's why some of those people that they come from families that have played their instrument, like talking drum or djembe. Some of those guys, their families have played that instrument for 600 years, and they passed it down. And so they teach it in an oral tradition in terms of how to play. Now, but it does change, and there are hundreds and hundreds of tunings, and it just does change from region to region, from village to village. And then sometimes it depends on the purpose, because they use it for religious regions as well. Now, kalimba is known, or embidder is known to put people in trance, because it is a very ethereal instrument, and they do use it to put people in trances and that type of thing in there. Yeah. Does that answer your?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you just learn by just practicing on
I learned from taking the instrument and playing to many albums, to music that I enjoyed, and learning from that, learning what to play and when and what not to play. Because just like Miles said, that in music, silence is important. Yeah.
When you say tune, do you mean like we tune a piano to a scale? What do you mean?
It's just that.
So
So the like the different instruments that I have, like this particular one, I tuned it to F minor. Now I'll tell you a funny story. When I was 16 or 17, I took my instrument, took the kalimba to a music store one time, and I let them hear it. And there were two guys in there. I knew I was onto something, because there were two guys in there, and one had a doctorate in music, the other one had a master's degree. And so I was sharing with them the instrument, and I was asking them how much were their tuners, and they were far beyond what I could afford. And so I said, I tuned this one. I didn't know what key it was in. I just know. I learned years and years later that I have a form of perfect pitch. Basically, two different forms. One form is you can tell you can name the note. I can't name the note, but I know the note within the scale. I know what note should come next, what's after, to the right or to the left, or to a higher and lower. So I let them hear this tuning, and the one guy looked at the other. He looked at me. He said, "You tuned this by ear?" I said, "Yeah." So I remember him saying something like it's tuned to like a F minor with an augmented seventh or something like that. And he said, "You tuned this by ear?" I said, "Yeah." I mean, that's all I knew. That's nothing for me. That's nothing special. But they were just blown away by that. And I'm like, because you don't really realize, you do it out of necessity. You don't really realize if it's great or small. You just do it out of necessity, And so for this as an example, this particular one is tuned to F minor, and the way that I tune, it allows me to play independently. Bass lines on the left. I generally will play bass lines on the left because I know that my right brain recovers that. And so, and I tune mine because you only have 15 to 17 notes. I tune mine like they do with harmonicas. So for example, I'll put the rhythm guitar type of note here, or back there. So this is tuned. You see the bridge underneath it. The shorter one here is a higher pitch, and they're harder to play because it's on a lot more tension. But
Play it again.
I usually will tune one lower than the scale, than the key. Other questions? Yes.
I would love it if you could explain the carving of that larger piece that we talked
Oh,
about.
you like that? Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then once it's done, you all can come up and take a look. Notice I said take a look.
We do have a pass around house kalimba that people can play with.
Okay, yeah. As I mentioned, these are part of my collection. I explained the Alex Eddy piece there. The piece he's talking about is an instrument from that I acquired originally from the Bamileke people of Cameroon. And the way it was carved out of one block of wood. And it was carved from the inside out. And that's this piece here. I took this piece back home to Kentucky, and I have a friend of mine that's a world-class wood carver. And you can see what they did, they took a solid block of wood, and I say drill, but I'm taking, hand, they chipped out these holes here so they could get to each section. And then they started carving these figures from the inside out. You can see how it's solid here. This piece, what do you think it weighs? 20 pounds, 30 pounds?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But if you come up close and you can see in there's an inner wall that's still flat up and down, all the way in, all the way around. Now they left it round on the out, just as a stand, basically. But if you look on the inside, you can see on the inside the body is still flat, and you can see the chisel marks all the way from the top to bottom. And when I let this friend of mine, because I wanted to get his advice, because he comes from a family of carvers, and I mean his carvings have been in major motion pictures and that type of thing. And when he looked at it, he was like, he was blown away by it. He was blown away by it. And so, yeah. But the Bamileke people, they have a very long tradition of carving instruments in this way, animals and figures and things like that. And then also having, I've seen a couple pieces like this that were half the size of this table and almost as tall as the table. Yeah. And now for those, they usually carve those for the king, in the village or in the city or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Now I won't show you which one, but I will say this. I was telling them about probably about 2000. I had these on display at a music festival in Atlanta, and I had them in a kids section, right? And so a guy walked by, and he was an African art dealer, and he started questioning. He said, "Do you know what this is?" And I said, "Yeah." I started explaining it to him. He said, "Yeah." He pointed out one, right? He said, "I'll give you $6,000 cash." And this is outdoors now. He said, "I'll give you $6,000 cash." And I said, "No." I said, it's not only did I say no, it never crossed my mind to ever even sell it. Because I was telling them that it was the first piece of artwork that I ever bought. And at the time I was living in Lexington, Kentucky, where horses live better than people. I drove from Lexington, Kentucky to Chicago, and not only that, I had a friend of mine who's an avid kalimba collector in Chicago, right? And he's a friend of mine, and I debated. I said, no, I'll show it to him after I get it. And it was in his city. And he had no idea. I drove to Chicago from Lexington, Kentucky, to just buy a kalimba. Now at the time, I'd say this: I paid $400. This was 2000. For me, $400 was a lot of money to be something that you can't wear, that you can't, because cars. I could get a car for $600. So for me to spend that on something that I couldn't wear, eat, or drive was a lot of money for me. And so, but I went up there and bought it, and then when I showed it to him, he loved it, but he was like, he was upset though. He was upset. So, but it took a little while, but our friendship was repaired. But yes, and so I kept that piece the whole all of this time, and there is another piece that's real similar to it. That's in the British Museum of Natural History, and the collector that wanted to buy mine, he was aware of that because I mentioned it to him, and but he liked mine. He liked mine, better. And then after we got to talk, he said, "Well, if you ever sell it, don't sell it for less than $9,000." I mean, because he's going. This is America. You're gonna make me want to make some money on it, and. Yeah, so now I will say this, in the last 2 or 3 years, I thought to myself, I said, man, I wish I could find that guy. The only reason why is because there was a period of time that I would have them on display all the time in different, collegiate settings and seminars and things like that. But I haven't done that as much, and I want them to be in a public place where people can enjoy them. But I'm not at the point where I can. Donate them.
We're beginning negotiations with Kevin.
So, but yeah, that's the history behind that. I also have a piece here that's it's made out of a turtle shell, and it's leopard skin. Now, for I know for the animal rights activists in here, I know it's taboo, but. Is what it is. Now the oldest piece I would say is probably this piece here. It's probably about 80 years old maybe. Yeah. So you can see where and I was showing them, me being a kalimba player, I can look at a kalimba like when I first walked in and I saw that, but they have some nice ones as well. You all see them, they're very nice. But I was telling them, I can look at a kalimba like an old kalimba. I can tell you if that person was right-handed or left-handed. Because of the way that the patina is graded on it, and whether it is shiny, like this one here, the guy that played this was right-handed, because you see the patina here, how shiny that is. It's because when he was playing it, once you strike the note, your thumb hits this, and over time, now this takes a lot to get it shiny like that. That takes a lot of playing. I mean, years of playing, and so. But that's like anything. When somebody's expert at something or been around something, you pick out details that other people miss, And so this one has a unique effect. This is similar to the distortion effect. So this gives you, and you know what that is, right? Spring reverb.
Oh, yeah.
Because as I'm playing it, you hear as me staying over top of it, it gives you that aftertouch or that after effect. Yeah. And I think these are lapis lazuli beads. But it took me probably 20 years to collect half of these. And less than 5 to collect the rest because of the internet. And then for example, like this one, this is an old piece. I'm thinking this one's probably 1940, 1950, somewhere in there, right? So I'm in Sanford, Florida. I go down to Sanford, Florida with a friend of mine that's a wood carver. He was selling his carvings there, and I saw a guy down there and he had one. He had this. And I asked him, I said, how much you want for it? And he said, give me $5 for it.
Okay.
He didn't know. But that was during the time when you rarely came across them. Yeah. So I played, yeah. Yeah. And so you just never know. Now there has been that was one I regretted not getting, and it was an old piece, probably from 1700. It actually came out of a museum, and the museum had that really old parchment paper that you know it when you see it, and it was still stuck to it, and it had a couple numbers or something written on it, and at that time that would have been probably 2008, 2010, and for what he was asking for, I loved the piece. I just debated about whether I wanted to get it or not, and then finally when I decided to get it, he had sold it. But it had come out of it had been in the museum for quite some time. Yeah. So.
Which one is the most valuable?
Say it again.
Which one is the most valuable?
The one that I told you that was sold for $6,000. The one that I told you that the guy offered me $6,000. You trying to get me to point it out?
Yeah. Can I guess?
Huh?
Can I guess?
Sure.
That one?
I said you can guess. I didn't say I would tell you. Which one did you say?
The one?
This one here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I'll let you see it. Now after I used to work security, so now after I told you, I'm going to keep an eye on it. Let you all know.
Is that a solid piece or does it have a
Solid
Solid.
piece.
When do you think it was made?
Say it again.
When do you think that one was made?
I don't think this is really old. I'm thinking this was probably 1960. Maybe 50, maybe. But the style and you rarely see them made like this. And with the copper, you'll see a lot of harps. You'll see a lot of the string harps from them. It's done the same way. They'll take copper and wind it around it. No, actually, I had a harp. Like that, and I ended up selling it. In fact, I traded it. I traded it for this one. Yeah. Yeah, I'll let you see it.
Do you play all of your collections?
No, those I don't. Some they're old and fragile. The keys. Yeah, the keys. These are metal. Now traditionally they use in roughly about 3,000 years ago they would use raffia, or they would use wood, which gives you a very warm tone. And then the kalimba or the inventor, they believe that the oldest time was about 3,000, but then it went quiet and there's no written documentation of it. And then it was maybe about 1,000 years ago it started showing up again in terms of the written documentation.
Do you think that, you said that was made in the 50s or 60s?
I'm guessing. I really don't know.
But would the design of it be similar to, did they stay strict with the tradition of the design? Like it has to look the way it
Villages,
looked
yes.
200 years
Certain
ago?
villages, yes, they do.
Okay,
That's
so-
that's deeply important for them.
Okay, so like something 500 years old would look very similar to this in terms of the scale and
Yes,
everything else.
exactly, and form and all that, yeah. And that's very, very, very important to them. Any other questions?
How do your hands hold up? I mean, you must have the strongest thumbs in history.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Honestly, they are strong and my thumbs are limber, but at the same time, I do other things, and I've learned to, I have the drive to achieve things, and so, I learned to work on my own cars and do all kinds of woodworking cars, things like that. And what I learned though was that for my thumbs, especially the joints, to be limber, to play, being able to play like that. And I've always played, so they've stayed that way. But at the same time, if I'm using a wrench or something like that, I have to be very careful because 2 or 3 times I put pressure on it, and that joint give out, and it bend back the wrong way. Man, it's a terrible feeling. But I'm sure you all had it happen. Yes, it's hard, man. And so I'm even to this day, I'm cognizant of how much pressure I put on it. So yes, they're strong in that way, but at the same time, I have to be careful with it. Yeah. And no, I'm not good at texting. I always get asked that question. It's a different mind process, and I'm texting or typing, man. I'm like this. But thank you for coming out, and you all give yourselves a hand. Thank you. You all can come up and take a look at the different instruments, and if you have other questions or anything like that, just let me know. And make sure you go on social media and you speak about Kevin Spears, you speak about Sigal Museum, and you tell them you came and you saw things you've never seen before.
Thank you, Kevin.